What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Form Check Friday here on Calgary Barbell. Now, in this series, we take your user-submitted videos from our inbox, FORMCHECKFRIDAY@gmail.com. We use a random number generator. We choose 5 of them. We put them up on the screen here, and we try to pick them apart, give you guys some suggestions on some routes to go down in terms of things that you might be able to do to optimize your technique, to become better lifters, to become more efficient, and to create a more consistent technique over time. So if you guys are interested in submitting, please make sure you're sending those videos to FORMCHECKFRIDAY@gmail.com. I still do get some other submissions to other inboxes, and those unfortunately just aren't going to get critiqued. So if you're interested in submitting, please feel free to submit to FORMCHECKFRIDAY@gmail.com. Housekeeping. Well, let's see here. We got our new circle logo stuff coming out in June, as well as a pretty cool hat that I'm interested in revealing when we get to that part. Taylor and I are going to be in Europe for some seminars coming up real quick here between April 24th and May 6th. We're going to be presenting in Basingstoke outside of London. We're going to be in Edinburgh, and we're going to be in Glasgow. So go ahead and head over to calgarybarbell.com, click on the coaching shop link, and you can find details for all of our seminars in there if you're so inclined. Now, without any further ado, we're going to get right into it here. So our first submission comes from a guy named Kazu. He's from Japan. He says he's a big fan of the channel, 1-year beginner lifter, and this is his first video he sent over to Form Check Friday. He's never competed, but he would like to compete someday. He weighs 90 kilos and squatted 142.5 for a set of 3. So let's open this up. There we go. Turn that down. Get my ugly mug out of the way, and we'll take a look. All right, man, so let's see what's going on with your squat here. So very smooth descent, good bar position, feet seem to be pretty planted, knees aren't rocking far too forward at the bottom. Honestly, Kazu, these squats look fantastic, my man. We can see on that last rep, that's probably because we're getting up beyond 8 RPE, and honestly, beyond 8 RPE, it's pretty normal to see technical deviations. We do see a slight little bit of that bar kind of pulling you forward out of the hole there, which is more pronounced on that rep than on these first two. But you can see a great job keeping the torso angle consistent, great job not letting those knees shoot back, kind of keeping pressure into the quads as he comes out of the hole and not allowing himself to get into that sort of squat morning pattern. So honestly, these are great, man. There's nothing wrong with these at all. Hopefully the things that I pointed out that you're doing well will give you some things to kind of focus on and watch for in the future, or heavier reps to make sure that technique is looking like this. And for those of you who are watching, you can kind of see demonstrated some of the things that I often harp on people for. So let's just take a look at this for that sake. Now, if we watch sort of the knee here and the hip here and the relative orientation of them in the frontal plane, watch, let's see, this second rep here as he comes up out of the bottom. Now, we're seeing that the knee essentially stays in line, and the knee extension begins, and the knees don't really come away from that line until we're, most of the way to lockout. So when we're in the bottom, a lot of times what happens is we see those knees shoot back, we see the hips shoot up, and I probably talk about this fault, I'd say almost every time we do a Form Check Friday. But with Kazu here, we're not seeing that. It looks really, really good. So for anybody out there who's wondering what it looks like to perform that correctly and what the heck I'm talking about when I always harp on people for that, this is it. This is what we want it to look like. This is fantastic. All right, man. Our next submission comes from, let's see, Jimmy. So Jimmy says, first off, sorry about the vertical video and the angle. Originally it was for personal progress recording. Pulling into what I consider more serious weights and don't care to hurt my back again. This was my build up to a 1RM of 500 kilos. At 445, sorry, 500 pounds, not 500 kilos, sorry, that was, at 445 by 2, I noticed my hips creeping up and losing tension in my back, making lockout a bit rough. I also noticed a lot more soreness in my hamstrings. I would like to compete eventually as soon as work and school begin to clear up. All right, Jimmy. Let's take a look at what we got here. What are we working with, Jimmy? All right, so we're doing some sumo deadlifts. Yeah, so I can see what you're saying there. We're seeing those hips kind of rise a bit early. We're seeing some struggle with lockout due to the lost extension. I think one of the things we're doing in this start position here is these hips are just too low. I think one of the reasons we're seeing this hip shift here is because those hips need to be a little bit higher. Now, because you're pulling into this position and then being forced into a higher hip position, we're then seeing a little bit of a little bit of loss of extension here, which is making for that rough lockout. Now, I'd be much less worried about hurting your back. Flexion, extension, mechanics, and spinal position under load would appear to have a lot less impact on injury risk than a lot of people would think, or even that I myself believed for a long time. So we can kind of abolish that idea that, oh, if you lose your back, you're going to hurt yourself, or if your back comes out of perfect orientation, you're going to hurt yourself. So I think that we do well to dismiss that notion first and foremost. In terms of making the lockout more efficient, I think starting with your knees a little further away from the bar. Right now, we're seeing the knees almost out over the bar. It's tough to tell from this angle. A little bit tough to tell from this angle. But we probably want the shins just back a little bit so they're a little more vertical. Looks to me like the shin angle is kind of out over the bar a little bit, instead of being, a little more straight up and down, a little more perpendicular to the floor. And I think by doing that, by bringing that back, it's going to push the hips up, and then it'll allow you to brace into a bit more extension when you go to start your pull. I think we made a video about this, and maybe I can get Dylan to link it in the description. But if not, we made a video about sumo deadlift cues that people kind of overdo, and this I think is one of them, pulling your hips too low to try to get super upright, to try to just get the hips really low, really close to the bar, I think is kind of a common misconception. And I think that's kind of what's going on here. But I think if we can get that little bit more extension, a little bit higher hips, like starting your hips there, pulling it more into extension, then you're going to have a bit of an easier time through lockout and getting that hip extension at the top instead of back extension. All right. Up next, we have something from Marcus here. He says, this is a sumo deadlift. He's been training 4 times a week since the 1st of January, seeing results on his bench and military press. Can't seem to progress in his sumo deadlift. First time I tried conventional, 3 months ago, pulled 286, but was sore in my lower back for days. That's totally normal. Just to stop there for a second, being sore in your back is okay. Being sore in your back is okay. Your back's made up of muscles, just like every other joint in your body. If you do something like max out a max out a conventional deadlift when you're not used to conventional deadlifting, your back is going to be sore. That's not an injury. That's just being sore. He says he was much more comfortable sumo, which is a good indication. The problem with sumo is that I can't lift as much. 2 months ago, I pulled 265 and haven't added a pound to that max since. All right, let's take a look. Now, the first thing that I'm going to say is if you are feeling stagnation in your lifts, a lot of times that's not going to be at this level. You know, when you're talking about deadlifting 265 pounds, it's probably going to be more of a programming concern when we start seeing plateaus, as opposed to a technique concern. With the sumo here, we're far out over the bar, so we can see right here, hips are very high, shoulders are well out in front of the bar. I think you'd be well served to get everything back. Pull your butt back, pull your knees back, pull your shoulders back, and when you pull your shoulders back, pull them down a little bit into your lats, and just work on trying to get into a tighter start position. It also looks like you're a pretty long guy, pretty tall. So another thing that I think would be valuable is probably going to be maximizing your stance width. I can't tell exactly how wide you are here, but if we can get you to kind of really, to really work your feet out so that they're pretty close to the edges of the plates, that's just going to allow you a little bit more room to pull yourself in, and hopefully you know, make use of your leverages a little bit better. But for right now, our starting position is just kind of not tight. We're not really pulling the slack out of the bar per se, and I think we could be doing that a fair bit better. The pull itself, in terms of the timing of things, in terms of your lockout, in terms of the mechanics, looks really good. But I think you could do a lot more work on making this starting position a little bit more ideal. So pulling into a little bit more tension, learning to pull the slack out of the bar, potentially widening the stance, all those things I think are going to go a long ways for you if you can get those figured out. All right, next we have Phil. Says, sorry I was having trouble rotating the video. I have a slight amount of elbow pain while squatting. I was wondering if you feel like wrist wraps would help this issue. All right, Phil, where's your video? There we go. All right, my man. So pretty low bar squat, which is kind of what I expected when he said he had elbow pain. I find a lot of times when we run into elbow pain, we can do a number of things obviously in the arm to change how we're sort of carrying the weight. One thing I'd recommend you try, Phil, is going thumbs over the bar. Right now, you have a full grip like this, and what I would recommend is going thumbs over, trying to straighten that wrist out so that you're packed a little bit better into the shoulders. And that straight wrist might help take some pressure off that elbow when you're squatting. There we go, that's what I'm looking for. Holy. Okay. So yeah, the biggest thing here is that if that bar's moving at all, if that bar's rolling down and putting too much pressure into your hands, as opposed to the weight being predominantly on your back, in a lot of cases, anecdotally, that's what will contribute to a lot more stress on those joints, and a lot more stress in general through the upper body. So we end up with, you know, things like having pain experiences in the shoulders and the wrists and the elbows. So I think it's less about, okay, wrist wraps will help, and more about, let's try playing with your grip width, your grip style, your grip position, and make sure that we're really holding that bar on the back and not necessarily holding the bar in the hands. Take a look at this one more time. Because we can see here out at the bottom that we're kind of falling forward here a little bit. So we're getting into a bit of a squat morning. Obviously this is a single, so we're not really sure what intensity this is, but I'm gonna guess it's pretty high intensity. Another thing that we're seeing here a little bit is we notice Phil's getting into a pretty overextended pattern, and we talked about this I think last week, where the overextension isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it is when we see this shift from overextension now to more neutral, or even a little bit of flexion. Chances are, if we could get Phil to start with a more neutral spine position, more neutral back position to start off with, instead of this extension, then we wouldn't see that shift in positioning in the trunk, and that would ensure that you know, we're not getting pulled forward as hard. We're not losing a lot of that positioning. So that would be my advice there, Phil. I'm sorry guys, it's really early. Set of 5 at 85%, scared of not hitting depth, but dealing with pain. Meet in 2 weeks though, from Rick. And this was November last year, so Rick's competed for sure. But hopefully, Rick, we can still offer you some decent advice. I feel like we've looked at Rick's squat before. This rack and this setup looks pretty familiar. So definitely depth. Definitely depth. There's no way that's not depth. I would be interested to hear where in the lift you're having pain, and if you've been able to resolve that. So Rick, if you're watching this video, comment below and let me know what's going on with your pain experience, how that was, how that's maybe changed. I think the biggest thing, technically speaking, and you know, the links between technique and pain experience are not very clear. So I would hesitate to say, oh, your technique is causing you pain. Probably wouldn't go there. I think in terms of your efficiency though, I think that the way that you're really bottoming out and just slamming into the bottom is not good from an efficiency standpoint. So here you're getting into the bottom and then you're just kind of really loosening up. We're seeing a big sort of squish into the bottom and then having trouble recovering that position. So hitting the bottom and then trying really hard to grind through maintaining position. I think if you slowed things down a little bit, maintained a little bit better tightness, and squatted to like there, instead of squatting to here and then hitting the bottom, like you're just kind of in free fall. So that would be the biggest thing I would work on, is trying to control that bottom portion of the range of motion a little more. So hopefully, Rick, hopefully your meet went well. Hopefully your hips feeling better. But yeah, let me know in the comments below how things went for you. I'd be interested to hear. And that is our episode, guys. Guys and girls. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you are interested in sending your videos over for Form Check Friday, send them to formcheckfriday@gmail.com, and perhaps you'll be featured on the show. If you guys have any questions about anything that I said, or if you have anything that you saw that I maybe missed, or anything you disagree with, go ahead and leave that in the comments section below. Leave a like if you liked it, hit that subscribe button for more of these videos, and we'll see you in the next one.